All right, so we made it. I know it's like towards the end of the day, so we'll try and bring some energy. And if you need to get a coffee, go ahead, and we'll just go ahead and get started. So the name of the session today is the Organics Value Hill, and we're basically going to be talking about the economic, creating economic engines of growth in our cities using the bioeconomy. And so we're looking at two different places: Kansas City, Missouri, and San Joaquin Valley, California. Say that 3 times fast: San Joaquin Valley, California. And we've got 3 different technologies and methodologies of processing the same type of waste, organic material. And so today we're going to hear from operators processing organic material in 3 different ways, and we're going to apply that to 2 different regions and cities of how we're creating these economic engines. And so without further ado, I'd like for each person to just spend 90 seconds introducing themselves, the scale, the throughput, and a high level of what is your operation like.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ian Puro with Burnham RNG. And so Burnham RNG, we're resource recovery infrastructure developers. So we go out and we invest in, build, own, and operate large-scale infrastructure projects that recover as much value from waste as possible. Our flagship project is in Pasco, Washington. That's Washington State, where it's about a $160 million facility that we built and we're currently operating, and it takes food waste from a cluster of food processors, a lot of potato processing and kind of agricultural kind of processing in Pasco, Washington, and it takes these waste streams and puts it through low-rate anaerobic digestion, where we generate biogas. That biogas is collected and purified to meet pipeline quality specifications and injected back in the local pipeline as renewable natural gas. And then on the back end, we have an algae-based treatment process that recovers nitrogen from the wastewater, and that algae is reused as a fertilizer. And then on the back end, the water that we generate is not discharged. It is reused by local farmers for irrigation. It's over 1 billion gallons a year of recycled water that goes out to the fields. So it's a project we're very proud of. I think it really shows us the value of waste, where you're not wasting any waste. The waste becomes a feedstock. It's a true example of industrial symbiosis.
My name is Kevin Anderson. I am owner and CEO of Missouri Organic Recycling in Kansas City. We are a 33-year-old organic recycler that processes about 220,000 tons of organic waste a year. 20,000 tons of that is food waste. And when I say food waste, it's packaged and unpackaged, pre- and post-consumer, and really basically taking that material and cleaning it, creating a slurry, and then taking that material to compost. We are the largest in the Kansas City region. We've been doing it 33 years, and we feel like we've got a pretty good idea as far as the sort of value of these materials, and we're looking forward to sort of discussing that today.
I'm Pat Crowley with Chippewa Farms. I'm actually based in McMinnville, Oregon, and we're insect farmers, particular species black soldier fly. And so what this looks like is we take in food waste, industrial process waste, large vegetable processors, we take their byproduct, some beverage manufacturers, we take their pulps. That comes in, we process it, and we dose it into trays, so it's all indoor farming. Then we add the insects at the juvenile stage, and in 7 days they've eaten all of that material. We dump the trays, and there's only 2 things left. The larvae go one way, and those go into animal feed markets. So we feed them to chickens and trout, salmon, and then their manure goes into fertilizer markets, high-value biofertilizer, just galaxies of beneficial microbes in them. So it's a zero-waste process, and we've operated our farm for about 5 years. We've managed more than 100 generations of our brood stock, and we're scaling up into our first commercial facility. We bought an old plastics manufacturing plant that will do about 50 tons of food waste input per day.
Hi. so excited to be in conversation with you all. Thank you so much, Brian. And my name's Karen Warner. I'm the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Beam Circular, which is anchored in the San Joaquin Valley, or broader Central Valley of California. We are an accelerator and a hub for innovation and industry scale-up in the circular bioeconomy. We work across a broad portfolio of bio-based fuels, chemicals, materials, and food ingredients, really specifically focused on unlocking the potential to upcycle and create new value from California's incredibly abundant and diverse organic waste streams. We grow 400 different commodities in California. The Central Valley is the heart of that agricultural engine. We also have forestry residues and municipal green waste. And over the next decade, we're going to be producing 56 million bone-dry tons of waste biomass every single year in our state, which is a lot of extraordinary potential. So our organization focuses on bringing together the capital, the partnerships, and the shared infrastructure that you need to scale a wide range of circular biotechnologies to create valuable products from these different waste streams. Over the past couple years, we've funded 28 different companies. We've launched 22 different workforce development and education projects, which will train 11,000 students and workers for good jobs in this growing sector. And we are partnering with over 200 organizations, public and private sector, from across our anchor region, the broader state, and globally to scale these innovations. And really looking forward to the conversation.
Beautiful. Well, welcome everybody, and I'm looking forward to double click on everything you all just said to go to the next layer. If I didn't say it already, my name is Brian Weinberg. I'm wearing many hats, but today it's the Foundation for Regeneration. We're a 501c3 that focus on economic development and ecological health in the Kansas City metro area. And basically, we took on this area of town called the Blue River Valley, which is on the east side of town. It's been in extreme economic, social, and environmental decline, but it's rich in land. There's so much land there, it's just sitting there in brownfields. And so really our focus and our dream was, how can we replace what used to be the steel and the auto manufacturers? A lot of companies left town in order to get better, more agile economic incentives. So they left all these brownfields. And so we're thinking, well, what could be an economic engine that could replace that? And so we stumbled on the circular economy and Missouri Organic. And what our dream is to think about co-locating multiple different methodologies of the same material. So we're taking organic waste and we're processing it the same ton 3 different ways and capturing value on the value hill. And so when you think about the value hill, at the top, it's you create all this energy and in the manufacturing process to get to the top of the hill. It's when your food is done, when the iPhone is finally ready. But as it kind of goes into, where it's leftover food on the organics value hill, it just goes straight to the landfill. Most food goes to the landfill, right? And so everything we're talking about right here is, obviously we want to recover it for animal or people to consume it if you can, but how do we get it back up the value hill? At the top of the hill, it's the highest value, in order to create this economy. And you know what? There's so many different ways we can create value in organics. And but not all organics are created equal, right? We're talking about everything from yard waste, like the branches and green waste, the leaves, to animal carcasses from the meat that you're eating when they're being processed, to biosolids, to pre-consumer waste and post-consumer waste. So when you get into the nitty-gritty of all this, not all food waste or not all organic waste is the same. And so from our panelists, what I'd like to know is, well, what specific feedstock do you want right now? What is it that you like? And what makes it valuable to you? And also, what do you not want? And so I was thinking we would start with you, Kevin, because maybe you could talk about, you're really a depackager. So you're taking a lot of stuff and you have an ability to be a platform for what you're working on.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So I think we generate revenues in some multiple different ways. I think tip fees is one of those, right? So when I say tip fees, we do organic waste tip fees, and we have, when I say organic waste, it's green waste. It's sticks, twigs, grass, leaves. The carbon part of what we do is composters. And then the other part of that is these food waste tip fees. So we're sitting at about $40 a ton for green waste tipping. we're anywhere from $65 to $110 a ton, depending on how that material comes to us. The $65 a ton is more in that line with what landfill fees are in our area, and it is clean, simple to handle, consistent, organic food waste. Maybe some processor waste, or maybe onion cuttings or lettuce, or things that we would get that we basically be able to just incorporate directly into the windrows and not have to do a lot of extra processing and cleaning. Then we get into sort of this like source separated organics, and we've been doing source separated collection processing for better part of 15 years. And really what it amounts to is as we sort of work up this hierarchy of collecting food waste and managing food waste, it gets more and more and more contaminated as you sort of go up that chain. You have food processors that are very clean and consistent and easy, and then as you go up this chain into grocery store wastes, or restaurant wastes, or cafeterias, or schools, all these things, restaurants, fast food restaurants, it all tends to be more contaminated. And so really what it amounted to is after about 15 years of doing this, we had large piles of plastic that was mixed with overs, and we had just lots of issues with trying to manage that on the back side of the program when you're trying to screen those materials away from that compost row. So we actually went through and started to do a process of looking at depackaging units and taking packaged food waste as well as source separated food waste, running it through this process and removing as much of that contamination as possible. Mostly plastics, which then go to waste to energy. And then that food slurry, which is about an 80 to 85% moisture slurry, can then be mixed with this carbon material and create compost out of that. So the second place we get revenue from is also product sales. So, again, compost directly, soil mixes and bioengineered soil mixes, rooftop soil mixes, mulches, and landscape supplies. So, once we do this compost process, we do have a revenue source that's on the backside, ranging anywhere from around $30 a yard all the way up to as much as $100 a yard, depending on that value-added compost product. So that's kind of what our markets look like. And I think really what we're after is more of this, organic food waste or industrial food waste, high moisture content, materials that we can really get our hands on and control and clean and then create these composts from that. I think that also leads to the situation where we're cleaning this material, so we're creating this slurry. Then maybe we can put these other pieces of the puzzle in place where we're maybe doing AD with some of it, or we're doing black soldier flies with some of it. And then, the digestate can go to compost, or the frost could go to compost or be mixed with the compost for a fertilizer value. And so really just trying to capture all those little different spots where that revenue can be generated for all these companies and trying to create as much value out of that 1 ton of waste as possible.
So right now you're doing, from what I know, you're doing you're depackaging and you're taking the food waste and you're turning it to compost. But the idea is, like, let's say that you're depackaging and you're doing it to biogas. What type of feedstock do you want with the biogas?
Yeah, so that slurry that you generate out of your depack is ideal feedstock for an anaerobic digester, because at least the kind of digesters that we're talking about today, there's a lot of different kind of digesters, but they kind of simplify the conversation. Our digesters take a pumpable material, so it needs to be a slurry. I can't just take like a pile of onions or a pile of potatoes and put it directly into a digester. They need to be macerated into a form that I can pump and mix within the digesters, and that allows the biology to be able to consume the volatile solids within the digester and then produce biogas and digestate on the back end. So it really complements, the two complement each other very, very well. And I will say, another kind of way that anaerobic digestion and composting can work well together is that with composting, you're limited by acres and land. So if you want to serve like an urban area with a ton of organics, you're going to eventually hit a constraint around the amount of acres and the amount of land that you have in the compost. Also, composting takes quite a bit of time, and anaerobic digestion happens at a higher rate. So you could theoretically go and take the slurry that Kevin's talking about from the depack. You could put it through an anaerobic digester. You would turn about 50% of that material into biogas, which you would sell as renewable natural gas. The balance of that, the digestate, could then go to compost, but you've already reduced the amount that goes to compost by about 50%. So it allows compost to scale. And also for the composter, you're getting a more consistent, uniform material because it's already been digested upstream, so it's already partially biologically processed. So it all kind of dovetails pretty nicely together. And I guess back to your question about what feedstocks I like for my projects, beggars can't be choosers in the waste industry. And if ideally, I would want an abundant, clean feedstock, but that doesn't exist. So if you look at some of the stuff Kevin was talking about, the more contamination, the more abundant the feedstock is. So there's a lot more material that's in a package or in a trash can or that's contaminated or commingled with non-ideal materials than there is just a pile of potatoes that we can tap into. So, it's the further you kind of go up that chain, it takes a lot of energy to remove the packaging, but once you have that slurry, it's a great feedstock for anaerobic digestion.
Let's move to the BSF. How do you think about your feedstock?
Yeah, we're kind of limited by the different buckets, criteria of feedstock. So the first one, the least limiting is what the insect will eat, which is almost anything that fits in their mouth, which is about 5 millimeters. So we have to grind it up first, but they eat a wide variety. They'll eat styrofoams and plastics in some capacities. A little more limiting is our revenue comes from the sale of the product, and so we're trying to optimize operations. So to get them to eat faster, increase our bioconversion rates and time to bioconversion rates, we want an optimal blend of nutrition. And so that there's, a blend of fats, carbs, and proteins. And it turns out an optimal blend is municipal solid food waste. It's actually right down the center of our fairway for kind of the optimal nutrition. So we are also investing in a depackaging machine. And then kind of the more restrictive is the regulations. And so we're regulated by animal feed markets. Right now we have approval for fish feed, poultry, dog food, swine, and cattle. So we have those approvals, but they limit what we can feed them. So right now we can't feed any manures to the insect, even though that's a natural part of their diet. If you find them out here in Texas, that you might find them in a manure pile. And then we also can't take post-consumer food waste. So if it's been on your plate, insects love it, but we can't then sell the product in animal feed markets. And then same thing on the fertilizer side. We're organic certified, so there's some limitations to what we can feed them for those certifications. We're in wine country, so we're biodynamic and Demeter certified as well, so there's even more criteria for those if we want to sell into those premium markets. But then the last one is water. We're really managing water. We for operations, we target about a 75% moisture content. And that really limits us bioregionally because we don't want to be transporting that water. So there's a bioregional fence around where we pull from. And the way we manage that, municipal solid food waste is about 85% moisture. And so we have a source of bakery waste. And so we just calibrate the moisture down with that dry bakery waste to get our target. But we're pioneering this here in the U.S., and so we're continually making headway in the regulations and unlocking new feedstocks. So I think post-consumer will be on the plate again. There's been lots of development of this industry in Europe and Southeast Asia, Africa, relatively behind here in the U.S., but one of the biggest limiting factors in the European models is the regulation around what they can feed the insects. And then also kind of what they have to do, the post-product pasteurization and things like that. And that's really stymied the development of it in Europe. And we don't have those as big of hurdles here in the U.S. So a lot more opportunity, tremendous amount of feedstock available for kind of hitting all four of those buckets here.
Awesome. Karen, you have anything that you want to add on that one or the next one? Okay. I don't want to leave you out, so.
No. I know we have a lot of questions.
We talked about the inputs, right? The feedstock coming in, but let's talk about what comes out the other end, right? Kevin, I don't know if you want to touch on the what's coming out the other end of your process. Let's talk about specific price points and products and the market that you're playing in.
Yeah, so most of the material we sell to Scotts and Oldcastle that are putting it in a bag and selling it at big box centers, all the way down to where grandma's buying a bag of potting mix for one or two pots. So we definitely run the gamut as far as markets. Again, mulches are a big part of what we do. So colored and screened and premium mulches, in the $30 to $40 a range. Straight compost is running right about $40 a yard. You start to get in value-added products like our Green Frontier product, which is a biochar additional minerals added. You know, you can get up to that $80 a yard range. And then we're sort of looking at this, you know, VRM humus soil material that could be as much as $250 a yard if it's got a lot of humic acids and humus in it. So again, I think that's where we stand as far as our products go, and that's kind of where we're selling the markets we're selling to today.
Perfect. Let's just keep going, lightning round. What are the end products that you've got, Ian?
Yeah, so the end product is digestate, which honestly, in most of our kind of base case projects, we assume a cost to dispose of the digestate, or we give it to a farmer for free for land application. So not really a not really a value source yet, but I'm hoping to kind of tap those markets in the future, potentially maybe build like dryers that can dry the digestate into a pellet that could eventually be blended for soil. But as of right now, the market for digestate is not that strong. On the back end, obviously, there's the renewable natural gas. You know, depending on what the offtake is in Pasco, we're getting almost $20 MMBTU for the renewable natural gas that we sell to Cascade, the gas company in Washington. And just to kind of give just a point of comparison, your typical fossil grid gas that you would use in your house goes for about $4 MMBTU. So there's a big premium for this, and a lot of that is large gas utilities doing voluntary purchases of the gas to help with some of their carbon goals. There's some states that mandate the purchase of it, like California has a compliance market, same thing with Oregon. So it just really depends on where you're doing business, but that really does drive a lot of the revenue per ton that we get of incoming waste is the sale of the renewable natural gas on the back end.
Yeah, our revenue model is entirely on the value of the upcycled ingredient. We don't do any tipping fees or rely on that for our economic model. But when the insects eat that food waste, it's a zero waste process. They generate heat. That's one byproduct, but we recapture that. That's why you can do a tropical species in high latitudes. So for every 1 kilowatt of electric energy we put in, we recover 20 kilowatts of heat energy, all from the insects themselves. Just recirculate that in the facility. Some moisture, that high moisture feed comes in, they vaporize that. And then the ones that we receive revenue from are the larvae themselves. A great market for us is just backyard chicken feed. Chickens are the number 3 pet in America right now. And you can go to any feed store, you can get a bag of larvae, and it almost exclusively comes from China right now. So that's a good market for us. But the real market that's driving this industry forward is aquafeed. Aquaculture is the fastest growing food production system on the planet right now, but entirely reliant upon ocean-caught fish meal. So wild populations of anchovy and herring, and that's a declining resource right now. 2 weeks ago, Peru just put out their quotas, and it's like 36% decline over the next 2 years in what they're going to be catching. So that's driving the growth in Southeast Asia and Europe is that aquafeed input. It's a good one-for-one replacement that you just can't get with plant-based proteins. And then the fertilizer side, we're in wine country, so wine grapes are our biggest market right now, but it's going into nursery, orchards, nut production. And then we just launched a home and garden product. I actually have some samples over there in the corner for home and garden use to replace synthetic fertilizers and biostimulants in your garden. So those are our 2 kind of primary products that we output.
Great. Well, I think now we get to turn back to Karen. So you're doing this on a whole regional perspective. You're building the entire industry cluster, and you're looking at high-value organics uses that we're not even talking about on stage today. So I was wondering if you could talk about what are we not thinking about, and what are you doing in your region that you'd like to add to the conversation?
Sure. Well, I won't say that people aren't thinking about it, because I bet folks absolutely are. But some of the stuff that we're really excited about these days are certainly in the kind of high-value food ingredient and even nutraceutical space, proteins. But I think what I want to chat about in particular are some things in the the higher value kind of material and chemical space. And one thing that we get really excited about is when either an individual company through their technology is able to do kind of targeting on the front end from their feedstock to pull out some of the higher value, at the molecular level, doing targeting where they're pulling out some of the, if you're working with a food processing side stream like grape pomace or tomato pomace, or almond shells or hulls, if you can take your feedstock and pull out some of the high value components to do, a cosmetic input, a certain, some biosurfactants get into kind of higher value territory. If you can get into a nutraceutical or food ingredient realm, then the co-products and byproducts of your process you can get the economics to work even better for your fuels or your commodity chemicals. I think when we first started our work a few years ago, we were so focused on the supplier perspective. We were really looking to solve for new revenue opportunities for our farmers and our food processors, and so we were really focused on kind of those high volume markets. I think we've realized that the stacking of technologies and stuff that you all are very much thinking about, as well as that clustering of symbiotic businesses is really exciting, because if you can get to the high value, then you're able to unlock, you get the economics to work better for then what you're putting into your digester, you're putting into your process that's going into more of a commodity product.
So we could add a bunch of other high-value ones to the stage next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, this whole idea of co-location and industrial symbiosis, like all these happening on one site, it's very hard. What actually breaks? This is just for anybody that wants to jump in. What actually breaks when you try and do this in practice?
I guess I'll go first. So I think one of the things that could break is I think of the contractual obligations between one industry and another when they're co-located, and one has to provide a certain spec of a certain material, and that's a waste of their process, because the waste can be very variable, right? And if you're relying on the waste to meet a certain spec in order to produce a different raw material, then that can be very challenging sometimes, because you're reliant on a completely, a third party, a counterparty that's running their plant the way they run their plant. If they have an upset, if there's some variability, then you might have an interruption of supply of your feedstock to be able to do your whatever your production is. I'm thinking more of the higher value materials, like anaerobic digesters are pretty robust, probably absorb a majority of material aside, so it's not toxic or something, but it's just trying to meet a particular spec day in and day out. I think the biochar industry struggles with this a little bit. Like, I was looking at a biosolids pyrolysis project the other day, and they were saying that they could make an activated carbon that could be used for water filtration. And to me, that would be challenging, because biosolids is from sewage, is very, very variable day in and day out. So might be a good fit for soil blending or some type of value like that. But if you're trying to meet like an industrial spec on variable waste, I think algae biofuels had this problem like 15 years ago. It's very tough to take a waste product and have it hit a consistent spec when you're running an actual manufacturing facility.
Yeah, there's also a single point of failure, so you really increase the risk. And so 2 case studies in our industry. We were developing a project in Kentucky, co-located with a whiskey distillery. It's a massive problem in the state. It's the #1 cause of fires, is just drying that byproduct out, and way more feedstock than they can manage right now in the state. But we were co-located, spent money on development. The funding for the distillery fell through, so the project was out. But that same thing happened. Right now, Tyson Foods is invested in black soldier fly and in a Dutch company, and they've been developing a project co-located with their meatpacking plant in Lexington, and then publicly announced the close of that meatpacking plant. So project's completely on hold right now. So when you have that, it's so optimal in so many regards to be co-located, but you do have that single point of failure for your inputs.
Yeah, I think infrastructure, utilities, the buffer zones, space and base, all these things, start to co-locate, and then of course the economics. Do they make sense for everybody that's involved in all those different pieces of the puzzle? And I think that remains to be seen. And again, I think competing with landfills and other things for this waste, I think that's where in certain parts of the country, yeah, there are room economically, but that's a big challenge for sure.
I'll just add on to that. I think in addition to some of the, we spent a lot of time thinking about the base infrastructure and utility aspects of things. Another thing that can just practically get in the way is permitting timelines, like differential permitting timelines. If you're trying to cluster some projects that really dependent on each other, that can be a dynamic. And then just an add on to the feedstock reliability piece. The co-location is so exciting when you have a certain type of really reliable feedstock. We get into some seasonality dynamics where some of the most exciting side streams and feedstocks in our region by volume are seasonal because they're ag residues. And so we are looking a lot at kind of how do you think about that broader supply chain, some of the stuff on pre-processing and storage, and ways that you can think about multiple inputs and what does that look like on a pre-processing side to make sure that even if one high volume side stream is only this part of the year, or you're kind of the rest of the year thinking about the economics in this way with another feedstock. So it's just a lot of coordination and moving pieces.
And what about things that really work that you've seen? And it's okay if you don't. And if there's questions from the audience, please raise your hand. We can engage now as well. If not, I got a ton of more questions, and we're running out of time as well. So, any comments on that one, or I can skip to the next one? That's it's easier to say what's not working than it is what is working sometimes. But what's the biggest? Okay.
I mean, I guess just the idea of that waste, that slurry that's being generated. I mean, we can pick and pull and choose different feedstocks. I think that could work. I think that there's opportunity there. The hardest thing about food waste is it's dirty, right? It's contaminated. It's, you don't like the contamination. You definitely don't want the contamination, And so I think that, and again, it messes up products on the backside too. So contamination is a big challenge. Being able to clean that is probably something that could work really, really well, and offer solutions for that material in lots of different ways.
I want to give a shout out to public procurement and off-takers stepping up as just really, really, really important enablers. Obviously, that can be public or private, but we funded a project this past year that was in the activated carbon plus space that we remain super excited about. And one of the reasons we're excited is because of local municipal off-take opportunities on the water treatment side. And so I think that can be such an exciting enabler.
Awesome. Okay, rapid fire, last minute. What's the biggest bottleneck that you guys have? Anybody?
My biggest bottleneck, it's not very exciting, but it's contracts in the waste space. In order for me to build like a $100 million plan and finance it, I need to have some type of supplier contract or a facility or a industrial partner that'll agree to send me waste under a 10-year contract. That doesn't exist in the waste management industry. They're used to just a truck picking up the waste that goes to a landfill. So just having trying to rethink the way waste is contracted could completely change the industry and have a lot of really positive effect. Like the capital's there, the technology is there. We just need to have a contractual framework to be able to make these projects commercial.
I think low, landfill prices, low dump tipping fees are definitely a challenge. We have a lot of great ideas, but we can't make those come to fruition if we're competing with $40, $30, $40, $50 a ton landfill fees.
Access to capital is our biggest limitation by far. In the risk, reward, impact evaluation, we would flying colors on the impact side, where zero water input for protein, that's kind of unheard of, and in the food waste hierarchy, it's reduce, feed people, and then feed animals. We're up there in the hierarchy, and then on the reward side, we show wildly profitable metrics where our cost of production, we can be price parity with the incumbents of fish meal and what we're trying to supplement or disrupt. But on the risk side, we're higher capex than composting, and it's relatively newer in the U.S., and so it's in that innovations phase. There's been a couple failures in Europe that have really created some capital market headwinds for us. And it's just that innovation, we're kind of in that no man's land between venture and project finance, where the nature of our markets, we're in agriculture and they purchase on 1-year contract cycles. So we're not in energy that are getting 10-year offtake contracts, and that excludes us from a lot of project finance. So it's that risk profile that we're on is a bit of a no man's land for capital for us right now.
I will just plus 1,000 everything you just said for the folks in our portfolio, and just know access to capital, but also specifically that kind of at that pilot and demonstration tech validation stage, the valley of death there, the high capital intensity of that stage and the need for shared infrastructure. We're super excited to be working on solving in this space through an innovation campus that we're building in the Central Valley. That'll be the first open access pilot and demo facility for circular biotechnologies of its kind in the world, that we're really hoping to bring down some of those costs on that scale-up journey, while also needing a lot of creativity on the investment front to get people into commercial production.
Valley of Death, but also a great opportunity.
So this is it. Thank you all for hearing us out, and thank you to everyone on the panel for joining us today and coming so far. And please come talk to us.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.